تيفيga qaranka ee dalka Israa'iil la yiraahdo i24 news oo ka hadlaya wareysanaya adna kana wareysanaya arrimaha Somaliland
that Somaliland can bring to the peace and stability of the Horn of Africa. The fact that Somaliland has been peaceful for 30 years, developing for 30 years, bringing its people back from the diaspora and from refugee camps around the world during the past 30 years, when we have very little international support except for humanitarian aid, that in itself is deserving of recognition, and that proves that Somaliland is a country that can bring forward and contribute to the peace and stability. And then, of course, if diplomatic relations are also granted to Somaliland, Somaliland would be a very useful and a proud member of the international community and the communities of the world that value peace, that value stability, that value free trade, that value economic and the fight to fight poverty and joblessness and of course anything that can harm stability and the peace of the world.
And we're seeing a kind of a redrawing of the map in this part of the world, aren't we? The relations between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco are really flourishing because of the Abraham Accords. Do you think that this new climate of friendship provides an opportunity for Somaliland? And do you think Israel might recognise the country?
maxaad umalaynaysaa dadweynaha reer Somaliland ama cid kaste ma la gaaray waqtigii ay Somaliland ay la furi lahayd wadahadal waddanka Israa'iil maadaama ay maanta aadna wareysteen maxaad soo umalaynaysaa waxaa la ka rabaa inaad ka soo jawaabtaan insha Allah commentka views ka soo dhiga in maanta Somaliland ay gaadhay in maanta ay wada hadal la furaan dalka Israa'iil maadaama Israa'iil gaabin ay danaynayso geeska Afrika sidoo aragtaan warkii markuu sii soconaynaa iyo wareysigii iyo su-aashii la weydiiyey adna.
Well, Israel did recognize Somaliland at the time of our independence in 1960. And in fact, Israel was one of the 34 or 35 countries that had sent congratulatory notes to Somaliland, that had recognized Somaliland, and among those 34 countries were the members of the Security Council at that time.
But do you think they might build on that and grant full diplomatic recognition?
Well, so at the time, if Somaliland becomes recognized and its identity is recognized, there is no reason why Somaliland should not trade with, establish relations with any country in the world. And in fact, Israel is part of the nations that live along the Red Sea, that have access to the Red Sea. The port of Aqaba that supplies Jordan and Israel is on the Red Sea. And there is no reason why Somaliland should not have relations with all the members, the countries that we share geographical location with, that we share maritime trade with and routes. But it will be at that time to discuss and how, the modalities. But any cooperation, in my opinion, is a good thing. It is the lack of cooperation that affects development and collaboration among nations.
Absolutely. And I mean, given the fact that Somaliland is overwhelmingly Muslim, I think it's 98% Muslim, is there any opposition to recognising Israel, to doing business with Israel openly because of a feeling of solidarity with the Palestinians?
waad aragtaan su-aal la weydiiyey adna sida fiican ay uga jawaabtay su-aasha meesha tala ah weeyaan diyaar ma u tahay Somaliland in ay wadahadal la furaan Israel? وسؤال مهمة maadaama su-aalaha la weydiinaya ay si fiican oo habboon uga jawaabtay adna ma laga yaabaa in siyaasiyiinta reer Somaliland waraysiga ay loo yeeshay TV-ga 824 adna in uu soo dhaweeyo in wadahadal la sameeyo dowladda Israel? sideed u aragtaan shacabka reer Somaliland in lala furo wadahadal waddanka Israel, maadaama imika markii hore ay naga hortaagnaayeen dowlado badan oo aan Jaamacadda Carabta ku jirno, laakiin maanta ay Jaamacadda Carabta badankoodu ay cilaaqaad toos ah ay ula sameeyaan dalka Israel? sideed u aragtaan in Somaliland ay la sameyso wadahadal ama la furto waddanka Israel? su-aashii baan kusii soconayna iyo adna iyo waxay ku jawaabtay su-aashii ugu dambeysay la weydiiyey.
There are many Muslim countries in the Middle East that have chosen to recognize Israel. We share the same religion with those countries. Collaboration with Israel is a strategic, political, and commercial relationship. Neither one country will affect the religion of the people living in those countries. And trade, security, collaboration is something that develops between governments and peoples. And Somaliland will not be the first Muslim country that has good relations with Israel. And why not?
And as so often is the case, business and trade are kind of going ahead of the politics. Somaliland is, as you mentioned, on a major shipping route. It's very strategic. There's been a lot of foreign investment, including from the UAE, which has invested heavily in the port. Do you see more opportunities? Do you see that growing, regardless of whether there will be diplomatic recognition or not?
waad maqlayseen inay Somaliland ku taalo meel istiraatiiji ah oo aad u muhiima oo maanta ay ku hirdimayaan wadamada aad ku waaweyn. waxaa kale ku dartay in ay dowlado badan ay ku sameeyeen investment Somaliland oo u horeyso dowladda Imaaraadka Dubai. marka halkaas ma laga yaabaa in garaa soo socota in imika Somaliland ay garaantii soo gaadhay oo laga yaabo inay wadahadal ay furaan Somaliland iyo Israel? su-aasha laakiin taale wax weeyaan oo ay gabadhu ay weydiisay wariyahay diyaar ma tahay inay Somaliland ay ictiraafto ama ay ogolaato Israel? adna way u jawaabtay, waxay tiri haddii annaga waddankayga Somaliland ay soo dhaweeyaan caalamku oo ay Israel laftiga ay ictiraafto oo ay cilaaqaad iyo diblomaasi fiican la sameeyaan oo diyaar u yihiin oo ay ictiraafkayga annagana aan iyaguna ictiraafaan, anagu wax dhibaato ma aragno ay tirmootay in markaasi aanu iyagana dee aanu sidee iyagu ay noo galeen aan ugu jawaabno. yani saasay u dhignay su-aasha marka la eego. alright, laakiin waxaad moodaa timir laftaa ku jirtaa. ma laga yaabaa in waktigii ay Somaliland Middle East-ka carabta ka tallaabsan lahayd oo ay dhinaca wadahadal la furi lahayd? ma laga yaabaa laakiin dowladda Israel danta ugu jirta Somaliland waa maxay talow maxay tahay? idinkaan diidinaya su-aalahaasi iyo jawaabtiina waxaa goosaa kusoo qori doontaan kumanka. waxaan hore ugu soconaynaa su-aasha u dambeysay ee la weydiiyey Marwo Adna.
I think the potential is limitless. But first of all, Somaliland brings to the world 850 kilometers of a coastline that are free of terrorists and free of pirates. It's 850 kilometers in a location that is surrounded by a lot of instability and insecurity. And it would be to the advantage of the free trade and maritime routes of the world to recognize Somaliland so that those 850 kilometers of coastline that are peaceful and stable today remain free and stable for the international world. Somaliland has a lot of potential for agricultural potential, maritime trade, maritime potential, maritime resources. Somaliland has mineral resources that wait to be tapped. Somaliland is a country that has as a route for the trade with our neighbors, our very big, giant neighbor, Ethiopia, with 110 million people, which are landlocked. And already 1/3 of the trade destined for Ethiopia and the food aid destined for Ethiopia comes through the port of Berbera in Somaliland. So to develop and expand those relationships and those partnerships that we have had for the past 30 years with Ethiopia, and now recently that we have with the United Arab Emirates, and with Great Britain that has also invested in the port of Berbera, offers great potential for further development, further partnership, and further development of the natural resources as well as the human resources and the political resources that Somaliland can bring to the international community.